You're almost starting the afternoon session so that we can start together. This afternoon session of day one, the first day of the Water and Sanitation Investors Conference. Our theme being accelerating investments for sustainable access to water and sanitation for all. Of course, organized by Water Fund, that is the Water Sector Trust Fund, financing the water sector. A lot of support, of course, from the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, and equally the Council of Governors. Thank you very much. For those who are here already, we want to appreciate your coming as I continue to recognize the support of a number of teams, of course. Thank you, welcome, and karibu. We need you here. Thank you so much. The choir, the terms of investments and development. And all of us, I know a number of excellencies from different state representatives, diplomatic corps. Karibuni sana. We are happy to have you, and we are very proud of this partnership in the water and sanitation and hygiene wash. As the choir gets ready, let me take a minute to appreciate a very special team that are with us here today. The team behind the sign language interpretation. Who have managed to interpret for us for both physical and our virtual audience. This is a team from the Kenya Institute of Special Education, led by Philip Omondi, Damaris Mueni, Robert Masinde, Emi Kemonto, and Lesa Odingo. The team behind the sign language interpretation, kindly take your position. I know we'll be having a moderately hot afternoon. I'm sure the facility will do all its best to ensure that our stay here is as comfortable as possible. Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company Choir. If you are ready, please, let's have a number. Let's appreciate the Nairobi City Water and Sewerage Company staff choir, please. Tuwapigie makofi. Asanteni sana, asanteni sana. You can take your position. As I equally request our sign language interpreters team to take their position so that we can go into the afternoon session. Thank you very much. As we go to the afternoon session of the first day, of the Water and Sanitation Investors Conference. Without further ado, allow me to invite Dr. Julius Itunga, the Chief Executive Officer of WASREB, who will be our facilitator in the next session. Karibu sana daktari.
Thank you, MC. Good afternoon, everyone. Your Excellencies, peers, all distinguished participants, we want to take a very quick, very few minutes to discuss the session that is earmarked for this afternoon. We note that we are falling short of time, and we are running late by almost an hour. So we'll try and make this one as short as possible, but yet not losing focus on what we intended to achieve. As introduced, my name is Dr. Julius Itunga. I'm the acting CEO at the Water Services Regulatory Board. And the topic this afternoon, we are discussing governance and policy framework, enabling environment for investment. Allow me, therefore, to invite the team that will be participating in this discourse. Jafet Mbuvi, Chief of Party, USAID, please, if you are in, come forward. Engineer Emery Kilongi from African Development Bank, please, if you are around, come forward. Ms. Mary Moechi, Chief Executive Officer, COG, if you are present or a rep, please come forward. Thank you. And my PS, Mr. Coril, PS in charge of water and sanitation, who is already present. Thank you. So we'll be discussing very briefly governance and policy framework, enabling environment for investment. I don't want to repeat what we discussed this morning about funding the sector and the gaps that we have. It is well within our knowledge now. I'm sure we have what we needed to know about sector financing and the challenge that we face as a country. And we all appreciate that really for us to attract investment, we need to be attractive. And let me use the same word twice. We need to be attractive as a country, both at the national level and at the county level. And the way to be attractive, one, is to ensure that there is good governance within the water services sector. There is good policy that would support that good governance. And in a nutshell, as defined, basically governance is about the mechanism on how an institution is directed and controlled, while policy is about the principles that guide the space. And with that, I will be inviting the discussant of this topic just to shed some light or their view on governance and policy framework, enabling environment for investments. Our request, we take 5 minutes each. We are about 4, so that will be about 20 minutes. Then we'll be having maybe another 5 minutes or so to change over. Then we shall have a panel discussion on the same subject thereafter for another 30 minutes or so, so that we are able to move to the next session at 4 p.m. So distinguished delegate, allow me now to call Japhet Mbuvi to share his insights on this topic. You can handle it from where you are seated. Karibu.
Thank you very much, Dr. Itunga. I had a small presentation, but I'm not going to use the presentation now, given the time that has been allocated. And I'm sure I should be able to essentially adapt to that. My name is Japhet Mbuvi, and I'm the Chief of Party for the Western Kenya Water Project. The Western Kenya Water Project is a $24 million project that is funded by USAID, and we aim at increasing the availability and access to water services in Western Kenya while enabling better management of water resources. And essentially, our key objectives are, we are working to increase the capacity of both the county governments and the water service providers to deliver good quality and reliable and safe water in the counties that we are working in, both in urban, peri-urban, and rural. And as well as strengthening the systems under which they work in, and these include governance, financing, water resources management, and the whole idea is to build a sustained foundation through which improvements in the water services can be realized, as well as also supporting and helping create increased chances of participation, both for the private sector, youth, and women. As I mentioned, we work in 8 counties of the Western Kenya region. Let me say that I see governance and policy development from 3 lenses: a political lens, a leadership lens, and a service delivery lens. Under the political lens, what you've been able to observe is that there is generally in this country, in the sector, a weak coordination between the national and the county governments in so far as water delivery is concerned. We have also seen issues of numerous litigations in the water sector on various issues, as well as a high level of turnover in terms of transitions. And this is especially so when we talk about the leadership within the water service providers. We have also seen inadequate allocation of funds in this particular sector, and then seeing it from the leadership lens, there is very limited autonomy, and even though we intended the water service providers to be autonomous, this autonomy has not been witnessed. And therefore, there is weak oversight role of the board of directors in the performance of their duties. This essentially results to insufficient accountability. From the service delivery lens, there is a disconnect between the huge infrastructure investments that we are seeing and last mile connectivity. We are seeing areas whereby large water treatment plants have been planned and developed, whereas the connectivity is very low. We have also seen issues of lack of transparency and compliance with the laws as we move forward. So for us in the Western Kenya Water Program, ours is about ensuring that we help the counties develop data and digital solutions that are supported by, that then are able to support the decision-making processes in this particular area. We therefore also seek to strengthen governance and accountability in the county governments, and this then helps us in trying to ensure we are able to get the counties moving. In terms of the results that we have seen so far, we have been able to support the counties, 3 of the counties, to be able to develop the laws and legislation and ratify their bills through the county assemblies. And we have also been able to work very closely with the county assemblies. I know there is a common belief in this house that the most difficult people to work with are the MCAs. Our approach has actually been to work very closely with them to ensure they've got a better understanding of what the issues in the sector so that they are able to deliberate and pass the laws and the legislation within the assemblies. And then again, we have also been able to ensure that we have worked and supported the county governments in supporting the development of the relevant sections of the CIDP. Within all this, we have done our capacity building through a lot of training of the county staff and the other sector institutions that we are working in. So in terms of, as I move towards closure, what some of the emerging lessons that we have seen is that it is very important to involve the stakeholders and legislators at the very, very initial stages of developing your idea and starting a project so that you can be able to get the necessary support. Again, co-creation and co-execution of activities with the county governments has also proved to be very beneficial to the work that we are doing. We have also been working very closely with the WASREP, and we have noted that there is need for the counties and the WSPs to align and comply with the guidelines that are developed by WASREP, so as to be able to develop and create some harmony within the sector. We therefore do recommend for all this to happen, there is need to expedite the implementation of the intergovernmental coordination framework. And again, there is need to support the counties to continue coming with a decent regulatory and policy framework that incentivizes the private sector to get involved in the development of the sector. And then there is therefore also need to strengthen the water service providers' financial capacity so that we can be able to enhance their credit worthiness. Let me stop there so
Thank you so much.
I don't start it badly for the doctor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Japhet. Let's appreciate him. It is, I agree, and you are agree with me, as it's a subject that will take almost a whole day. So if we were really to give it the in-depth discussion that is required. But in summary, we've gotten the salient points that we require and the areas of focus that each of the stakeholders require. We move on to Engineer Emery from African Development Bank. Please, in a very, very summarized way, give us your insights.
Thank you very much, Dr. Itunga, the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, development partners present, water sector institutions present, the private sector, all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, governance can be a constraint and opportunity for increasing financial flows into the water sector. An enabling environment is fundamental to attracting investment finance. An enabling environment is measured by qualitative indicators affecting service standards, such as tariffs, government policy, legislative provision, institutional setup, financing, autonomy, and accountability. A weak or a poorly designed enabling environment that fails to clearly define and provide a framework for the valuing and pricing of water resources and services can limit the scope of governments and water service providers to access critical sources of revenue and finance. The regulation of water pricing and service tariffs offers an insight into the interplay between water laws, public and political expectations, and the sustainability of water sector financing. Considering that water supply and sanitation are essential services, the public often has the expectation for keeping the water supply and sanitation tariffs low, with accompanying political pressure to regulate to keep tariffs low, sometimes also due to concerns about service affordability. This can directly inhibit adequate cost recovery, which water supply and sanitation service providers need to work towards to enable the delivery of reliable, sustainable services. A strong enabling environment comprises a set of policy, institutional, and regulatory arrangements that facilitate investment in activities that contribute to water security. Well-designed policies and institutions are important for not only attracting investors and for ensuring that investments deliver intended benefits, but also contribute to the sustainable financing and management of water resources and the delivery of water and sanitation services. The resources should be accompanied by efforts to ensure that institutions have appropriate levels and types of capacity and expertise. Water sector institutions need adequate capacities in order to attract investors, maximize existing finance, and increase their potential to attract, manage, and sustain new and innovative investments into the future. In some cases, a commitment to undertake capacity improvement reforms may be a condition for receiving finance, as it helps to maximize investment sustainability. Capacity building measures can target different types of institutions. For example, water supply and sanitation service providers can receive technical assistance to reduce non-revenue water or improve billing and collection, and through this, improve their creditworthiness. A regulation study by the African Development Bank in 13 countries in the Eastern and Southern Africa showed that regulatory uncertainty was a barrier to increasing investments in water infrastructure behind the quality of project pipelines. Mechanisms for regulation of services and information-based instruments can help to make service providers' performance transparent and set standards and incentives to further improve it. Partnerships with the private sector can be a powerful means of improving service performance and efficiency, provided that the enabling framework is in place. Private sector involvement in water supply and sanitation enhances accountability, transparency, innovation, and adaptation by exposing operators to contractual obligations, performance indicators, penalties, and audits. Private sector involvement can also nurture technical and managerial skills, introduce incentives for efficiency, quality, and customer satisfaction, and helps mobilize additional financing, particularly in resource-constrained countries, which can be impactful for the achievement of water and sanitation goals. Investors seek evidence that water service providers have a strong ability to manage taxes and tariffs, collect revenues, prepare and manage transparent budgets, devise capital plans, coordinate contracts and tender processes, and conduct accountable consultation process with the public and investment partners. Strengthening the enabling environment for investment is therefore fundamental to providing the conditions that can attract commercial finance. Strategically deploying public and development financing along with risk mitigation instruments such as blended finance can help overcome the hurdles for commercial investment and play a critical role in mobilizing additional commercial finance. Governments can develop financing approaches such as revolving funds that provide consistent levels of funding certainty over time. This can provide a strong signal to the water infrastructure project developers that planning and project development efforts will be rewarded with funding. In conclusion, governments have a decisive role to play to ensure the enabling environment is in place to take advantage of these opportunities. Success will depend on the enabling environment, which goes beyond water and encompasses the finance sector and broader factors related to the country's governance and political stability. Development finance institutions are available to support in this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Engineer Emery. Let's appreciate Engineer for the contribution, the insights shared, and it is indeed very, very clear, I think, to all of us that really governance and policy supporting the institutions that are involved in the value chain is something that we must achieve in order to realize more funding for the sector. With that, I move on to the CEO, COG, Ms. Mary Muiti, who is represented here by Mr. Brian Mudhoka. So, Mr. Mudhoka, over to you. Please try as much as possible to be within the time allocated. Thank you, Emery. You kept exactly 5 minutes plus a few seconds. Okay, go on.
Thank you, CEO, Dr. Itunga. I want to first start by delivering the goodwill message of the CEO of the Council of Governors, Mary Muiti, who would have wished to join us today, but is engaged on activities and assignments of equal weight, and then wrap up by sharing our thoughts as a council on what we believe would be the next direction with regard to the investment in the sector. If I go overboard, I know you will understand that it's the voice of the 47 governments trying to work with the other level of government to be able to achieve the universal coverage as envisioned in the NAWASIP and the Vision 2030. The Water and Sanitation Investors Conference is timely as it provides a platform for an important discourse and collaboration in the sector. During the Devolution 2023, the conference held in Uasin Gishu, His Excellency Andrew Mwadime, who is the Chair for Water, Forestry and Natural Resources at the Council of Governors, assigned the Water Sector Intergovernmental Coordination Framework with the then CS for Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, Honorable Alice Waome, which seeks to steer attainment of a robust and sustainable water sector in Kenya through the coordination and attainment of policy goals and standards in the sector. Further, the framework is also meant to provide a mechanism from which liaison between the national government and county governments and stakeholders through the provision of a platform for dialogue and engagement with stakeholders, which is very critical for the sector. Further, to ensure a conducive environment for water sector investments, county governments have made specific frameworks and strategies that are tailored to empower water utilities and sanitation service provision in emphasizing their accountability and results-driven approaches. And I'll be able to highlight this when I wrap up. The COG, through its sector committees, has been strategic in supporting counties to enhance performance and service delivery to the lowest devolved units. This is through provision of various mechanisms, including forum for consultation among county governments, and also strengthening the intergovernmental relations through adopting the approaches that are provided for in Article 189, which states that the two levels of government are distinct but should be guided by the principle of working together through consultation and mutual collaboration on matters that are of common interest. In this role, the water sector remains a significant and prioritized sector at the counties in terms of planning, budgeting, and development for service provision as envisioned in the 4th schedule of the Constitution that assigns the counties the role of water and sanitation service provision. And counties have made some significant strides in this respect, with over 35 counties having enacted their water-related acts and policies, and also more than 25 having county water master plans in this respect, and this was according to the State of Devolution Address 2023. However, policy and legal gaps still exist in the sector by counties, which the Council believes through the consultative approaches that we've been adopting, we are going to collectively work towards the service provision reality in respect to the water sector. Despite these challenges, a lot of goodwill from both levels of government and investment and investors from the investments from the development partners have been injected in the sector. The Water and Sanitation Investors Conference, it is our hope, will pave way for accelerated solutions for achieving the shared vision of water and sanitation in Kenya. Supporting the remaining counties to put in place the legal frameworks in water remains fundamental and very urgent. Further, the development of county strategies and county prioritized water and sanitation plans, including the water and treatment plans, the water storage infrastructure, the dams, and expansion of sewerage coverage, especially in rural and underserved areas, will present a solution to the challenges we face. The National Water and Sanitation Investment Program signifies a critical milestone in realizing the universal access, and the collaboration between the two levels of government alongside the support of development partners is very pivotal for its successful implementation. The Council of Governors pledges its unwavering support to drive positive change and ensuring equitable access to essential services across the nation. As I wrap up, as I did indicate, the framework that was launched and signed during the Devolution Conference 2023, I think this has been operationalized through the first forum meeting that was held in Mombasa, whereby the dialogue between the two levels of government and all water sector institutions is the way to go if we are going to attain the goals and standards that we've set in the sector. And we recognize the significant strides that county governments have made in the respect of ensuring that they create a conducive policy and legal environment for investment in the sector, because that is very important if water sector investors are to undertake various investments across counties and also the goodwill. The independence of water utilities, I think this has been a big conversation, and in the messaging and from our forums, especially with the Governors Committee on the Water, Forest and Natural Resources, and also the Council, I think this has come out, and also from the forums that we've engaged with WASREB, with the CECs, I think we've underpinned that the water utilities need to be independent as much as they are established by the counties under Section 77 of the Act. I think their independence to ensure that they function well is very important for a well-functioning sector. And the issue of the financial provisions under the Act for counties to be able to fund and bail out water utilities without audit queries, I think this has come out, and counties have been able to chip in many occasions during the COVID pandemic and other occasions, whereby they're able to come in to assist the water companies to be able to meet their operational and maintenance costs. The issue of assets transfer, I think when fast-tracked, will be able to enable the water utilities also to enjoy the full autonomy of the services. And we pledge our commitment to the intergovernmental framework, Bwana PS, and I know you understand the devolution very well from the other angle, and we'll be able to collaboratively work together to ensure that this framework is a reality. We signed it, and we don't want to leave it at the point of signing for the ceremony, but we will work together with the ministry to ensure that we are able to get there. The issue of the strengthening also of the governance of the water utilities at the county level. You realize that when these are launched, from first year to third year, the graph is rising, then almost all of a sudden there is a decline. I think standard operating procedures for the committees will be very important to ensure we are able to deliver this. The issue of co-implementation, co-monitoring, and also co-creation has been underpinned by earlier speakers, and I think this would present an occasion whereby the demands and the issues that are priority to county governments, especially at the level of designing, are what I see the light in terms of the implementation. And this is also in respect to the issue of the County Governments Act, Section 114, that will require the collaborative engagement in terms of recognizing that county governments also have CIDPs, and the national development programs should also try as much as possible to align with the development priorities of the respective counties. Thank you, Bwana.
Thank you, Brian. Let's appreciate Brian. Brian is representing a government, so, and to go through a bit on him so that he has enough time to articulate the position of the 47 county governments. So thank you so much. We all appreciate we are reading from the same page and the focus is one. Now, to wind us up on this, I want to take this opportunity to invite our PS, Water and Sanitation, Mr. Julius Corril, to give a keynote in a summary way, when a PS, so that you represent the other level of government. We have earned all the levels of government very, very well today. I remember in the morning, I think Governor Mwandime came here like 3 times. We've heard from Brian now, we heard from the PS, we heard from the CS, now the PS again, and that demonstrates the seriousness of this business. So over to you, Bwana PS.
Thank you so much, Dr. Itunga. I stand by all the protocols that have been mentioned before. And again, gratified I'm with you this afternoon just to talk on the issue of governance. And governance is where failure or success emanates from. And within the sector, it is very critical in ensuring that if we have strong governance structures, then we will be able to avail water to Kenyans as enshrined in the Constitution. So today we have convened here to discuss that topic of paramount importance, the nexus between governance, policy frameworks, and creation of an enabling environment that is conducive to investments, particularly vital sectors such as water resource management. Investments, both public and private, is the lifeblood of sustainable development. It is the engine that drives innovation, fosters economic growth, and uplifts communities. However, for investments to flourish, it requires a stable and supportive governance and policy framework. This framework must provide clarity, transparency, predictability, and incentives while mitigating on risks and promoting accountability. In the context of water resource management, this imperative is even more pronounced. Water is not merely a commodity, it is a fundamental human right and a cornerstone of development. From agriculture to industry, from health to energy, water underpins every facet of our lives and economies. Therefore, ensuring its sustainable management and equitable distribution is not just a moral imperative, but an economic imperative as well. In this regard, I'm pleased to highlight the progress made in our efforts to create an enabling environment for private investments in the water sector. The recent enactment of the Water Amendment Bill of 2023 aims at operationalizing public-private partnerships in the water sector. It represents a significant milestone. By facilitating collaboration between public and private sector, we unlock a new avenue of investments, capital, innovation, and efficiency that is critical in providing water to citizens. Further, our commitment to addressing challenges, particularly non-revenue water and water infrastructure vandalism, underscores our dedication to sound governance and effective policy implementation. Through the initiatives like, and I would like to maybe report that as a country, we have non-revenue water management standards. These are the things, or these are the standards which guides how water service providers, the WSPs, are going to engage in to ensure that water is availed to the citizen and minimize and eliminate, even if possible, the losses that are being experienced. I think the earlier speakers, including myself in the morning, had said that we have non-revenue being measured at around 43%, a slight reduction from what it was a year ago of 45, and we've come from a high of 60% non-water revenue. So we are making progress, because even as we are calling upon the private sector to join us in investing and providing this resource to the citizens, they need to be guaranteed that the investments that they have are going to be safe and secure. And so the issue of revenue sustainability is very critical to them, and they need to see efforts being put in place to reduce non-water revenue. We also, as a ministry, have also set up a unit we're calling Water Infrastructure Police Unit. This is the one that also is helping us to protect the water infrastructure, particularly the pipelines, prevent illegal connections, as well as also just to help in regulating and making sure that water is available at the right time. And we've seen through this, it is 1 year old, and we've seen significant improvement in the area of reduction in water, non-water revenue. We also are enhancing transparency, accountability, and integrity in the water resource management, thus creating a more attractive environment for investments. As we are continuing, we are also, within the area of non-revenue, encouraging experience sharing amongst our water service providers. We've been calling and comparing the performance of each, so that each can learn from those who are doing very well. I think we were told of a water service provider in Nyeri that has the lowest non-water revenue of less than 20%, which tells us that it is possible to reduce non-water revenue to the lowest possible. We also, through such forums, we are encouraging best practice and also experience sharing amongst our water service providers. So we are very committed as government and national government to see how this is going to be done. And we are not doing it in isolation. We are working together with the county governments. I think, as you've been told, service provision is done by the counties, while the ministry or the national government is responsible for transboundary water resource development, so that we are able to share the resource across the board. Moreover, as we strive to achieve universal access of water and sanitation by 2030, we recognize the importance of strategic investments in irrigation infrastructure and water storage facilities. By expanding irrigation schemes and promoting sustainable agricultural practices, we are also enhancing food security, but also creating new opportunities for investments and economic growth, particularly in rural areas. However, our journey towards creating an enabling environment for investment in water resource management does not end here. We must continue to strengthen governance mechanism and streamline regulatory frameworks and promote public-private partnerships to unlock the full potential of our water. Moreover, we must address underlying challenges such as land degradation, transboundary water management through coordinated action and regional cooperation. I think as we also continue, the issue which has emerged from my colleagues here is the issue of intergovernmental forum, that is water sector intergovernmental forum. I think for us as a ministry, we agree with the need to strengthen and reinvigorate this unit so that the two levels of government can be able to engage regularly and address challenges that are common across. The other thing also is that in the past there's been, I think the two levels of government have been planning with assumptions that the other arm is going to do what they are supposed to do. And so with the start of the NAWASIP, we've started that approach of consulting, so that when we are implementing programs, it is a program that is agreeable to both levels of government. And that's why, like even now, on the issue of last mile, which has emerged as an area that has been overlooked, because national government only went for the heavy infrastructure investments, that is the dams, the water treatment plants, and the bulk transmission lines, hoping that once it reaches the areas or communities where communities are, the county governments take over from there. But because of the heavy nature of capital required in the last mile transmission, we find that is an area that the county governments are not able to fully accommodate within their budgets. And that's why, as national government, we have also agreed with the county governments that when we design projects, we will now also incorporate the last mile, so that the water does not just end at the water treatment and the tanks, but it goes also to where the citizens are. So in conclusion, creating an enabling environment for investments in water resource management requires visionary leadership, robust governance structures, and also innovative policy frameworks. By working together, that is both levels of government, the businesses, the civil society, and international partners, we can unleash the transformative power of water, drive sustainable development, and build a brighter future for all. Thank you.
Thank you, PS. Let's appreciate him. Thank you so much, our guest speakers this afternoon. We really appreciate your insight into this topic, and we all appreciate that we are reading from the same page, the two levels of government, our development partners, represented by African Development Bank, and the other non-state actors represented by the USAID. We all appreciate that governance governance and policy are key drivers to any kind of investment, to any success in any venture, and therefore is something that each one of us is required to take seriously from where we sit, all the stakeholders, and once that is done, then we wouldn't be able as a sector to attract the resources that we require to take this sector forward. Otherwise, thank you so much. Please, you may now take your seat, and let's appreciate them as they take their seats. As they take their seat, I want to hand over to Mr. Wario, Abdi Wario from Gatsby, Africa. And as he comes over, I've been requested to, in the interest of time, to request the panelists, Engineer Rima, Mr. Shuria, CEO, WRA, Mr. Tony Abugo, CEO, WASPA, Mr. Eric Rassan, Water Sector Councillor, Daninda, Mr. Mares Sivaji, CEO, Kewasnet, Mr. Robert Kisura, Chief of Party, USA and Stawi, please come forward and take positions at the podium. Mr. Wario, please. Oh yes, there you go. It's your session. Karibu. And I'm taking my position.
Thank you very much, Dr. Itunga. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to have a very interesting conversation in the next 30 minutes. I have very powerful panelists, and we'll try to make sure that we are done in the next 30 to 45 minutes. In the previous conversation, the centrality of effective policy framework and prudent governance structure in attracting investment and sustaining has been discussed at length. For sure, there's no doubt about it. Yet, many sector players continues to struggle to attract the investment needed for long-term sustainability. Therefore, in this high-level panel, we will explore various elements of strengthening accountability, intergovernmental coordination, regulatory anchorage of private sector in the water space, bankability of water institutions, public and private sector roles in national and devolved system of governance, and regulatory reforms addressing gaps for enhanced confidence, private sector confidence. Therefore, I will quickly jump and pose the first question to Anthony Ambugo, the CEO of WASPA. Anthony, water value chain presents several opportunities for private sector participation. Apart from conventional supply-led opportunities, such as supply of meters, pipes, pumps, chemicals, and drilling of borehole, what are other innovative ways that can private sector tap into water value chain? Over.
Thank you, Bwana Wario, for that question. I think there is no doubt that the participation of private sector is important in the entire value chain of water service provision. And we are aware that this mandate is very clear, as articulated in Article 43 of our Constitution, especially the WSPs at the lower level of the pyramid within the architectural framework of the legal and regulatory framework. So private sector plays a very important role in terms of provision of implement, and utilities now have the cardinal mandate in terms of providing water services. But we have a number of challenges that we have been experiencing, and this one has been articulated well by the PS. You realize in terms of non-revenue water, as a nation, we are losing almost 45%, which translates monetarily to around in excess of 11 billion. So you realize that metering as an implement is very important, but we have realized that within the entire reticulation network, it is not the only solution. You will realize that there are utilities which have 100% metered coverage, but they are still suffering. So what we are realizing is that we need now to make quantum leaps in terms of management of non-revenue water by providing opportunities where the private sector can come in strongly in terms of linking up with the water service providers and other institutions, so that we can crowd in the issue of finances. So one area that is key, we realize that within the entire realm in terms of financing, there is a huge financing deficit. So the private sector is being looked upon to have resources, and the other area is now investment in technology, so that you don't just sell a meter as a meter, but you provide a solution that is coming in well packaged. Don't just sell a meter, then you get off. And I think that is what we are looking at in the entire value chain. So I think the public-private framework will provide the opportunity where we can engage more with the private sector. We are aware that the private sector is driven by profits, but you realize that water is also a public good. And I think this is the discussion we have had with the ministry and the regulator, because you realize that for us to do business, we need tariffs, the source of money. And you realize that there is a lot of rigidity in terms of review of tariffs in the water sector. It is not like in the energy sector, where the regulator can do that every now and then, depending on the forces within the macro environment. So I think what is important is creating that enabling environment where the private sector can now crowd in finances and have the guarantee that the solution they are providing within the entire value chain, they also have to recover the investment that they have made. Thank you.
You have an opportunity to interface between the Kenyan water sector and Danish private players. What are some of the key concerns of the Danish private sector players in investing in Kenya water industry?
Thank you very much, Abdi. We have a very strong representation of Danish water sector companies in Kenya. We have the Grundfos pumps that produce very reliable and energy efficient pumps. We have AVK precision valves. We have Kamstrup smart meters with a battery lifetime of close to 20 years. We have Danfoss that are doing variable speed drives. And we also have Danish consultants present here with a lot of know-how. Companies like Neros and DHI are very active on the Kenyan market. And I must say, I don't see any concerns. They recognize Kenya and East Africa as a very, very important and growing market, and it truly is. If you look at the investment backlog that has been repeated many times today, I think we are looking at around 1.3 billion Kenyan shillings. Of course, it's a huge challenge, but it's also a huge business opportunity. Yeah? And Danish companies, they recognize that. If you're going to achieve access to water and sanitation for all by 2030, you will need all hands on deck. And that's not only financing, that's also what the private sector companies can do. Yeah. But of course, they're also seeing challenges on the market as it is. And I think the biggest challenges are the procurement process that favors the cheapest solutions in terms of the upfront investment cost, not the life cycle cost. Many of the Danish hardware are recognized for reliability, low maintenance, and operational costs. And meaning that the actual cost, investment cost, plus the maintenance and the operation turns out much, much cheaper than going for the cheaper solution in your upfront investment. Yeah. And that, of course, comes down to procurement criteria, procurement processes, but it certainly also comes down to having norms and standards. I know you have a very, very developed, well-developed set of norms and standards, but they also need to be policed. They need to be regulated properly. Yeah. And then, of course, how do you navigate here? I think many of the Danish companies are looking at other ways of making business, different varieties of triple Ps, ESCO-like, performance-based contracts, technology as a service. And I just talked to Grundfos the other day, and they actually they're talking to the utilities here around, because they have these very energy efficiency pumps, that you can actually go in and you can make the efficiency gain, the savings on the electricity bill. You can actually harness that upfront and make that part of the contract. So there's a huge interest, there's a huge recognition of the importance of this market, and we are looking very much forward to the years ahead. Thank you.
Eric, my next question is directed to Robert, Chief of Party USAID STAWI. From the statistics that we have, 66% of regulated water companies are yet to attain operation cost coverage ratio of more than 100%. If these utilities were to make major progress, regulatory compliance and having better oversight, stable governance, and predictable management will be very paramount. From a key stakeholder point of view, what do utilities and counties have to do to ensure better oversight and predictable management to attract investment?
Thank you so much, Wario. And thank you, everybody. My name is Bob. I'm the COP for STAWI, which is a SAD-funded project. As you've already observed, we are saying only 34% of the regulated WSPs are able to operate and meet their cost of operation. The rest are either not functioning properly, or they have to be subsidized by the government or even other partners. Our experience, out of the 9 counties where we are operating, we did an analysis to find out where these water service providers are at. And we looked at which of these service providers have the basic governance instruments to help them to be able to deliver. And we discovered there are some that do not have completely any approved document, be it a strategy, be it a regulatory, a board that is already approved tariffs, and what was able to use to rate them, they don't have. When you talk about, and somebody has already talked about the issue of non-revenue water as just one indicator, during the launch of the Impact 15 by WASREP, we realized that most of our WSPs are operating around 50%. Now, when you look at that amount of unaccounted for water, and we are living with it every day, it's just like if you are running a restaurant and you are making 100 mandazis, and every day 50 of those mandazis are not accounted for, and tomorrow you make another 100 and 50 are not accounted for, and you continue to keep the manager and the waiters in that business. It doesn't work. So, and when you look at how our WSPs are performing, you realize we seem to have agreed it's okay. What I would call, we've normalized a dysfunctionality. And it starts with, when we say our target is to get 25% non-revenue water as a regulator. So we are saying we are ready to live with that level of performance. We realize there's an issue of governance, there's an issue of capacity and capabilities among the MDs, among the board members, because most of them, the appointments have political forces behind them, so it's not driven by capacity, by competence. So our observation, Wanwario, is if we're going to make a significant difference in the area of governance among the water service providers, we need to be, using the regulator, who is WASREP, the national government and the county government, put in very strict measures to hold these water service providers accountable and just remain firm to make sure it works. As I said, we were shocked to find a water service provider that has none of the necessary tools to manage, and yet it has been operating, and even today it's operating. The question is, who is supposed to hold them accountable? Who is supposed to challenge them? I want to end with this example of Nairobi and Mombasa. These are our big cities. Non-revenue water for these cities is at 50 and 51%. How much money are we losing by allowing 50% of the water by these big cities going unaccounted for? Who is supposed to take that decision? So for anybody to talk about investment, there are things that we need to plug. And those are issues of non-revenue water. Are they possible? Yes. Nyeri has proved. Nyeri are operating at 17, much lower than the target of WASREP. So we are able to do this through concerted effort, through better governance, through having the right people on board, removing politics in water management, And when Brian was talking about it, he said, providing the independence these companies would need so that they can operate. So my experience and our exposure after working with these water companies is, let's follow through. Let's ensure water service providers are able to meet these requirements. Let's ensure as a regulatory framework exists that enables them to operate as they ought to operate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My next question is directed to Shivaji. Shivaji, yesterday we saw Kenya Water Service Workers Union having a peaceful demonstration, and the whole idea was they were opposing the proposed legislative bills that are either at National Assembly or at Senate. My question therefore is, civil society groups and workers' association at times associate PPPs, public-private partnership, with privatization. And this has resulted in opposing such initiative, as I have said before. How do we onboard these two groups to embrace PPPs?
I think, thank you, Aria. I think I'll start with just disabusing the fact that civil society groups explicitly reject privatization or the engagement of private sector actors within the sector. When we look at this sector and the history that it has had with regards to water sector reforms, it was very intentional with regards to levels of performance, but also recognizing that the most significant challenge for the sector has been a governance challenge. Now, when we look at the proposition to engage private sector, which in many instances civil society has supported, and in fact, civil society severally partners with private actors in the promotion of achievement of sector targets. But the big question really is, what is the framework that the private sector engagement is going to operate within? And what are the safeguards that are in place to really ensure that the public good is ensured? Now, even when we look at the example you have given with regards to the legislative reforms and specific references, you'll realize that these civic groups have very pointed issues which either have not been addressed and have very specific infringement on public good. And this is what the civic groups are raising. It's not an opposition with regards to the engagement of private sector. Instead, we are trying to look at what are the systems and the mechanisms through which the private sector actors are going to be engaged with the same level of, with the same yardstick with regards to issues of accountability, issues of transparency, and really ensuring that there is the promotion of integrity within the manner in which they engage and provide support to the achievement of sector goals. As it is, the PS spoke about that provision of being not just a commodity, water not just being a commodity, but also a fundamental human right. So how do we ensure that our legislative tools are providing a balance between that interest that private sector engages through, but also ensuring that the public good is also promoted? And as civil society organizations, we have given all our utmost support to government and different stakeholders with a purpose of evaluating what are the circumstances that are
are surrounding this engagement, and what is it that could promote the engagement of private sector without interfering with that public good. So it's really essentially looking at how do we protect that public good, not an opposition to private sector engagement.
Thank you, Shivaji. Allow me to break the monotony of water services and jump to water resource management. My question is directed to Mr. Shurie, CEO WRA. Payment for water abstraction fee is essential in enabling better water resource regulation, planning, and conservation in ensuring the availability of raw materials for production. What needs to be done internally and externally, especially from a governance perspective, to ensure mutual payment for these fees?
Thank you very much. As we said, my name is Mohamed Shurie. I'm the CEO of Water Resource Authority. I will approach that question in maybe 3 ways. Number one, the abstraction fees that we collect is a regulatory tool. Water Resource Authority regulates water resources. So whatever we do, we normally do it in a regulatory way. So that tool is a tool that we normally use for management and enforcement of water resources. Yes, it is true that there were a lot of reluctance from the public and from also water, or I can say general abstractors. Why? Because they have different way of saying it. For example, somebody has just said here that these water service providers, who are the major abstractors in this country? Because number one is irrigation schemes, number two is water service providers. And they are losing 50% of their revenue that they were to collect. So at least they collect only 50%. Because of that, is that 50% sufficient to their operations? So since now they cannot raise those issues, they have to result in other ways. Because sometimes I can say that they might not even be able to pay because they are losing the 50% of the water. In fact, that is now why the regulators are not collecting enough fees based on some of those such like this case. So regulator is not a profit-making organization or institution. Whatever we collect, we use for the purpose of the regulation. So the other approach is now we have been trying to sensitize the people. We've sensitized. When the regulations were made, we will sensitize the communities. We have talked to them. Because people have to understand, whether it is a civil society, whether it is a public, people should understand that this country is a water scarce country. We have a very little water to allocate. WRA allocates water to everybody in this country. Whether you are a water company, whether you are private, everybody must be allocated water by WRA, Water Resource Authority. So people must understand the narrative behind this. For example, during the drought, when we have a serious drought and water levels have gone down, so WRA has to move and balance upstream, downstream. Because if the people on the upstream wants to use all the water, what is going to happen to the people downstream? So we do a lot of activities during that time. So whatever we get, we normally use for that purpose, to make sure that we regulate and enforce now the law. So people, when NG, must understand also that we are not profit making. The impact now, what is going to be the impact if the WRA is not regulating? So the best thing now is to make sure that now people to understand that what we are doing is for betterment of everybody in this country. Citizens must understand the work we are doing. We are not making any profit. So people are reluctant. Sometimes, you know, it is true, people don't pay. Don't pay. If they pay very little. And I'm sorry to say, not all the people. There are very good Kenyans who are paying. But majority of Kenyans are reluctant to pay. So we are asking Kenyans now to see how best to allow us also to regulate them. Because everybody needs water. At the end of the day, you need water. So we have put all the necessary measures in place. There's a Water Act, there's a regulation in place. We are trying to also see how best that we can now bring users associations on the, like now water resource user associations on board. Those are the ones who prepare sub-catchment management plans to make sure that now they come up with a livelihood project in those communities. So it is very important for us now people to understand what we are doing. So I think I want to repeat again, unless we reduce now this and account for water, I think we'll not have much to do, because they have no capacity. These water service providers might not have capacity now to pay whatever the regulators are asking. If you look at it, yes or no? If you look at it critically, WRA, according to the regulation, we have classes of permits. There's a class A, which is a social class, which we don't charge, but we collect the information from there. So my point here is, yes, we know that people are reluctant, but we are requesting Kenyans to understand that we are working for them also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shurie. My second last question goes to CEO WASREP, Dr. Itunga. Water Act 2016 provides an opportunity for PPP, but the pace of uptake has been slow. What are the barriers that have hindered private sector participation, and what are the efforts that are being put in place under regulatory purview to encourage private sector investment in water services, especially knowing that this sector is very sensitive politically and socially to high tariffs?
Thank you, Ario. Yeah, that is quite a rounded question. It is indeed true that the Water Act 2016, as it is currently, allows the water service providers to participate in PPPs. However, we've seen minimal uptake in that space, and not only for PPPs, but even on the space of commercial finance. Indeed, as it was discussed earlier, there are two key parameters that inhibit the capacity of our WSPs or water service providers to attract partners willing to engage in a PPP arrangement. And key among them is what has been discussed deeply, the non-revenue water, standing at 45%, 40%, any investor would think twice to engage with that kind of business. However, as it was explained by the PS and the Water Secretary in the morning, efforts have been made, and we've set standards. We've even gone to another extent where, through the support from the Japanese government, through JICA, we've sent our engineers to Japan to go and benchmark and find out what is it that can be done to bring the non-revenue water down. In certain areas, like it was explained, we've seen tremendous improvements, and there are others that have completely refused to improve despite the exposure. So that is one of the main reasons I would assign to the companies not being attractive. The second one is what I would refer to in quotes as poor governance. We've had instances where despite the law, the Water Act, the regulations, and various governance standards established by the regulator, I would call this through impunity. We've seen instances where the boards are dissolved and others appointed at will, and therefore, without stable governance structure in any entity, that confidence to engage with that entity obviously will be eroded. As a regulator, we keep educating, creating awareness through advocacy programs with the county governments, the WSPs themselves. We've seen quite some improvement in a number of them, but the others which are still stationary. So I wouldn't assign those two as the main key reasons, the non-revenue aspects and the governance aspects for the WSPs not being attractive at all to PPPs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Itunga. My last question is directed to Water Secretary, Engineer Lima. An enabling environment with government as the lead is very critical in building private sector confidence to invest in the sector. What are some of the key actions taken by national government to make the sector attractive as a business opportunity for private sector? As you answer that question, it's also useful for us to highlight to us what is the overall status of PPP preparedness of the sector.
Thank you so much, Mr. Wario. Delegates, participants, are you there? Are you there? Because I'm seeing everybody's looking down, people are tired. Yeah. So, Wario, before I answer this question, I want us to go back and see where this sector has come from. I have personally witnessed this sector grow. Right now, we are talking of a budget for the sector, that is water and sanitation, of close to 60 billion Kenya shillings. We are talking of turnover of close to 26 billion Kenya shillings. And that is the report that we normally get from WASREP. But when the sector started growing when we started the reforms, we started with a budget of 2 billion. That is 2002-2003 budget was 2 billion. 2003-2004 budget was 6 billion. Then after that, it went to 8 billion. Then it went to 12 billion. Then it went to 26. So this sector has grown. Even the amount of water that we produce, that we are now producing 455,000 meter cubed per annum. Originally, it was not there. The non-revenue water that we are now talking about at 45, it used to be much higher. If you did analysis 2002, several utilities were above 80%. Now we have got only one utility that is 77%. The next utility is 60%. Still very, very bad. But the requirement for the sector is not matching what the public sector has. The requirement is very huge. You had heard of the financing gap. You have a legislative framework. The PS mentioned in the morning about the law that we are amending, so that waterworks development agencies can be contracting authorities. As per the Act now, they are not. And they can also be bulk overtakers, so that the private investor can do investment, maybe a dam, and then the water is overtaken, the whole of it is overtaken by waterworks development agencies. That is depending on where the dam is. Now, the question that we have been talking about, that even the CEO WASREP has mentioned about non-revenue water, we are also working on this because we don't want investment to be just one source, but it's supposed to be end-to-end. As we are working to reduce non-revenue water, as we are working to have standards for water service providers, as we are training them, we need to reduce non-revenue water to the acceptable levels so that the sector is de-risked. The issue of last mile connectivity, because you can only have customers if you connect people, but many systems have been done and do not have last mile connectivity. We are heavily now investing on last mile connectivity. So when we do that, then the sector is de-risked. When it comes to the viability gaps, because some projects might have viability gaps, the government is ready to take on to fund these viability gaps. Most of the projects that we want to do as PPPs, we have done feasibility studies through the government. So the private operator, the private investor can use this to start off. Though they were done purely on engineering, we never factored the cost of the capital. So the investors can take this in and factor the cost of capital and know that this project is viable, and this project I can take and implement. We are ready to finance RAP. RAP is currently very expensive. We are ready to finance that. Some of the projects have also been fully designed under what we call Kenya Town Sustainable Water Supply and Sanitation Program, supported by the Africa Development Bank. We have done 12 studies. All these are now lined up for PPP. Downstream works, like for example, we are completing Twake Dam. We are now at 90%. The downstream works are also lined up for PPP, but they have been fully designed. Because the cost of designing, the cost of feasibility study, all these are taken by the investor. Even Takwel downstream works, those are ready to be taken up by the private operators, private sector investors to invest and assist in providing services. The progress we have made in PPP is that we have received close to 10 PIPs, privately initiated proposals. These are being analyzed. I think about 4 have reached project development phase. That's a very critical phase. It's a phase that takes 6 months. Yeah, that's a very, so about 3 are doing very well. That is Sabaki water carrier, that is going to take water from Sabaki to Mombasa and Kilifi. That is almost closing. Then we have desalination in Lamu, which is also moving forward very well. Musima, we are advertising again. In the next 2 weeks, it will be on the papers because there were challenges. We are also processing Maragua Dam, Maragua 4 Dam. We are processing Darugu 2 Dam. Darugu 2 Dam, we have a challenge with the community there. Yeah, so we are talking with the community, convincing them to allow the dam to continue. However, what we need to do is to deepen the reforms. We need to deepen the reforms. I've said that the turnover is close to 26 billion. This is not being used as self-financing. It's as if all of it goes into operation. Yeah. In the morning, I was discussing with one of us, an IMD. Then we were discussing that if you compare Tokyo, city of Tokyo in Japan, and where is providing the services, Tokyo produces close to 4 million meter cubed of water per day, 4 million. And where it's working is producing less than 500. But the staff is the same number that Tokyo has. So you can see that's a challenge. So we need to deepen the reforms, bring in efficiencies in the water service provision, bring in good governance at the water service provision, so that the sector is fully de-risked and is ready for investment by the private sectors. Because as Itunga had said, no investor, no private sector investor will invest where he's going to burn his fingers or her fingers. So we are doing that as a sector so that we have a good enabling environment for the private operators to take up it is not just big dams. Private operators can even do small works like just an intake somewhere, just a desalination plant somewhere, and provide services. Do a bowl somewhere, provide services to the people around that place. It is happening. It's happening in Ongatarongai, it's happening in Ngong, where the people living there are getting services from private investors. But they need to be regulated by WASREP. They need to be regulated so that we know the quality of water they are selling, they are giving the Kenyan people, the rate they are charging, so that everybody, all Kenyans are protected. Consumer protection, that's a function of the national government. And as far as the ministry is concerned, that is exercised by Water Services Regulatory Board and also Water Resources Authority. Thank you so much. God bless us as we move on to have an efficient sector. And it is coming, I can tell you it's coming. In the next few years, we'll be there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my esteemed panelists. There are a number of take-homes from this conversation. I'll try to summarize them. It's quite clear that there is opportunity for private sector participation in NRW management. The conversation today, we have mentioned NRW severally, and Anthony has clearly said there is an opportunity there. The other thing we need to relook at is the element of tariff. We need to review our tariff so that we can attract private sector investment and also make our current utilities able to sustain the operations. It's quite clear that private sector do not see challenges. It is we on this other side that see challenges. And this has been evidenced by the number of Danish private sector players that we have in Kenya. And therefore, it is upon us to see more of the opportunities that we have in the industry than the challenges. We've also said that there is need to make significant difference in the management and governance at water utilities to attract private sector. And it is quite clear that we need to raise awareness on public-private partnership and enhance accountability and transparency framework for private sector engagement. When it comes to water resource management, we have come to a point that there is need to reinforce mutual relationship between the abstractors and the regulator, and there is a rallying call to reduce NRW so that utilities are enabled to make payment for what they abstract. And then still the same stuff, which then points to the need to address this particular point. Addressing inefficiencies and governance will be very useful in attracting private sector in service delivery. And we have said, and this has been said by Engineer Lima, we have seen and witnessed tremendous growth, both in terms of exchequer, expenditure and allocation, and revenue generation. But as they say, you need to think and rethink of your paradigm for you to see a better change. And hence the question, are we able to achieve universal access to clean and safe drinking water if we continue with the same paradigm? And an engineer has said that we are actually lagging behind in terms of making investment, and hence to the need to rethink and attract private sector investment through PPPs. And the commitment is that the government will provide viability gap financing where projects are not commercially viable. And it's good to note that there are 10 privately initiated proposals that have been received. And the concluding remarks is that we need to deepen our sector reforms. Kindly join me in appreciating my panelists. And thank you very much. I hand over the session to Ruth to give us guidance for the next session.
Yes, so Thank you so much, Wario. Thank you so much, our panelists. Thank you so much, CEO Itunga. You've done us well. So apologies, we have run a bit late, but now we are ready to move to our convener sessions. So I'll just read them out for those who may not be having the program, and you can proceed to the convener sessions. In this hall, the amphitheater, we have the convener session on presenting Kenya's water and sanitation initiatives for bottom-up economic transformation agenda, that is better, and the dams initiative. Today you've heard a lot about dams from the sector leaders, and the session is by the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. So if you are in that session, you're in the right place, okay? You can stay here. Convener session 2 is in the Aberdare, Perspectives of Economic and Operational Sustainability of Water Sector Infrastructure Investments by the Royal Danish Embassy. So if you are wanting to go to that convener session, you can make your way to the downstairs, the lower level, to the Aberdare room. Convener session 3, Kenya's sanitation economy, the new frontier for impact, investment, and sustainable development by Sanitation and Hygiene Fund is in Shimba room. Shimba is just downstairs. You will see it as you go out, and there are markings as you go out. And then convener session 4, showcase sessions for successful and replicable blended finance models by KIFWA and KCV, Kenya Climate Ventures, is in Lenana room. And then convener session 5 in Taifa room, Millennium Water Alliance is on using development funding to leverage private sector finance for improved water access in northern Kenya. So we are free now to move to our convener sessions. And as we leave, just to note that tomorrow morning, we shall have our high-level session on public-private partnerships. It will be right here in this amphitheater, and it will start at 8:30 a.m. So it will be a plenary, so it will be the only thing happening from 8:30 to 10 a.m. So thank you very much, and we can leave at leisure. I don't know, this room now belongs to the Ministry of Water, so I hand over to the owners of the room, and the rest of us can decide where to go. Thank you. Engineer Mwakeo, or Engineer Lima. So the Nairobi Water Choir, you can be singing as people disperse, but do it quickly before the ministry takes over the room. Thank you.
Asante, thank you so much. Kindly let's settle down for this late afternoon session. Yeah, so this session at the amphitheater is to present Kenya's water and sanitation initiatives for the bottom-up economic transformation agenda and the dams initiative. Please allow me to begin on a lighter note, since it's late afternoon, with the indulgence of the Secretariat, who I'm sure are of the Christian faith, because that is where you hear stories, good stories of where fine wine was only served when people were drunk. So let us begin to listen to the fine wine from our water secretary, who is the technical head at the State Department of Water and Sanitation. For this session, I am Engineer Jacob Mwakio, also with the State Department for Water and Sanitation, and as it was in the early afternoon, we launched the NAWASIP, and as has been informed to us, we have the water sector intergovernmental coordination framework that has stemmed from NAWASIP that is being implemented. We also have the K-Wash program, which I'm pleasantly leading, that has stemmed also from NAWASIP. This is a 6-year program. We intend to serve 5 million Kenyans, 400,000 refugees, and 320,000 host community members. That said, we are well pleased to be the presence of Engineer Alima, who will tell us more and into detail on the water and sanitation initiative. The devil is always in the details, and this is a brilliant opportunity for us to hear the details. And as he has presented all day today, he has been with us in the water sector for quite a while. So he is well versed with what we need to do, where we've come from, and where we are going. Thank you. Welcome, Engineer.
Thank you so much, Engineer Mwakio. Maybe the Secretariat can upload the presentation. Yes. So this presentation is the overview on the sector requirements, particularly explaining and detailing the financing gap. So as you are all aware, in this slide we are saying that why we exist, why the sector is there. The sector is there to fulfill the constitutional requirement on the right to water and right to sanitation. So because we cannot do this over time, immediately, it is progressive realization. The steps we are making to fulfill our constitution, the steps we are making to fulfill the SDG number 6. So The outline will have water and sanitation, water resources, and the 100 dams. On the water and sanitation, we have the Water Act 2016, which we are implementing, and today we have talked a lot about the investment and investment planning. We talked about Nawaship, we launched it here, we have copies. Maybe some of you might have received copies, and I think it is also on our website. So if you did receive a copy, you can also download it from our website. When we did our census in 2019, we had the figures that came out of the census report, because they were counting people and also asking questions related to water. If we analyze that alone, then we have found out that according to the census, 34% of the Kenyan people are using water from their households. They have piped water supply, either in their dwelling or in their plot, or a public tap or a standpipe. 34%. But if you go down the scale, you will get 39% are using water from boreholes, using water from protected springs, using water from rainwater collection, and also supplied by clean water from the vendors. So that gives you around 73%. When we analyze just the ministry alone, we get 72%. WASREP will always give you a little bit lower, because WASREP deals with the 91 regulated utilities, which is also putting that we have got 62% of Kenyans with access to safe water. But that pie chart, you can see also that we have got 27% that are using water from improved sources, water which the quality is not known. So these are unprotected springs, these are unprotected well, and surface water. Surface water is water from rivers, water from lakes. Yeah. So people just collect water from dams, people just collect them. 22% of Kenyans just collect those sources and use in their homes. Now, if you do your maths well, then you will realize that this 22 or 27 of the 50 million Kenyans, you will get a figure which is close to 18 million Kenyans. So 18 million Kenyans still use water that we don't know their quality. We don't know its quality. We don't know whether it is bad or it's good, that they use it. So that tells us that the mandate we have now of providing water to Kenyan's people is much bigger than when we received our independence in 1963. We have more people now to provide water services to than we had during at independence. In the same nature, you will see the sanitation. People using improved sanitation. Improved sanitation is 83%. Unimproved is 10%. No facility is 7%. So this no facility means they are using open defecation. They are using the booths. They just go to the booths. Yeah. So there are people who have deprived of their dignity, because they just do it in the open. Whether there's a snake there or there's no snake, they just go to the booths and relieve themselves. So this is not a good situation. 83% looks good, but this is not, all of it is not safely managed sanitation, as far as the definition of safely managed sanitation in SDG 6. Because if you work out safely managed sanitation, then the figure comes much lower, 34%. Now, in terms of the roadmap, the roads towards universal access to sustainable water services, you have seen this analysis that we have done. That if we do our business as usual, then by 2030, we'll have only 4.2 million households. 4.2 million households with access to safely managed water services in urban by 2030. Only 4.2. But if we mobilize resources and we do things unusual, we can get 7.3. 7.3 million households with piped water by 2030. So there's a lot of investment that is required. Because if we do our business as usual, meaning we go on with the public investment, with public investment only, public finances only, and that is the GOK counterpart, the concessional loans that we have, the grants that we have, will only reach 4.2 households in urban, instead of reaching 7.3. When it comes to rural water supply, you can also see if you do business as usual, doing business as usual, we'll end up with 6.9 million households with water by 2030. But if we mobilize resources and we receive 100% improved water services in rural, then we'll be able to cover 8.7 million households. The total number of households in this country, as per the census, was 12.5. So you can see the scenario where we are. And that is why we have to mobilize funding. We have to mobilize resources to achieve that. The next chart there will show you urban sanitation. If you continue doing business as usual, then we'll have 2.1 households. 2.1 million households receiving sanitation services in urban by 2030. But we need to cover 5.8. So that we receive, that is if you have to receive 80% sewerage connection by 2030. So this is a lot of resources, moving from 2.1 million households to 5.8 million households require a lot of financial outlay. This chart is on rural sanitation. It is the only area, rural sanitation, we can do what we are doing and then we still achieve SDG by 2030 by having 8.7 million households connected with rural sanitation. So our target for 2030 for urban water supply is to have 100% coverage by 2030. The target for 2030 is 100%. Urban sanitation is 40% access to sewerage and 100% access to sanitation by 2030, so that we are able to meet the SDG requirements. Rural water services is 100%. Our target is 100% by 2030. Rural sanitation also, our target is 100% to improve facilities in close vicinity of households. Currently, we have got 13 counties that are practicing open defecation. 13 counties that are still practicing open defecation. So what level of investment do we need to achieve these targets? So this table here gives us the level of investment that we need. For us to achieve our targets for urban water supply, that is 100% to safe water, By 2023, what is needed is 445 billion Kenya shillings. What is available through government financing, through concessional loan, through grants is 209 million Kenya shillings. Within that period of 2023 to 2030. So you can see the investment gap, additional financing needed beyond the budgetary allocation. For urban water supply is 236. For urban sanitation is we have a budget deficit of 365 within that period. And then for rural supply, rural water, we have a deficit of 54. So additional investment to end open defecation, we have a deficit of 1 billion. So you can see the total available is 529. The deficit is 529 billion. The deficit, what is required additional investment, is 652. Much ahead of, much above what is available. Yeah, but if we also need, as we said earlier, we need also to fund from funding through sector reforms by improving efficiencies. So by improving efficiencies, when we have national government expenditure and county government expenditure, you can see that for urban what we have, sanitation what we have, and rural what we have, and rural sanitation, what we have, total 529. But we need to mobilize from water service providers financial improvements. If they improve efficiencies, reduce non-revenue water losses, and have real tariff increase, and borrow from commercial banks, then we can get a total of 157. We can get a total of 157. That improve efficiencies, we improve on governance, that things are operated on commercial basis. People pay, people consume and pay. You have reduced your non-revenue water. You have adjusted your tariff to the cost recovery tariffs. Then you are able to get 157. Then we can also mobilize levies. Levies, we have got sewerage levy in the Act, which has not been mobilized, which has not been operationalized. We have got water sector trust fund levy in the Act. This is for piped water consumption, which has not been operationalized. Then we can get additional from the levies 9 billion, bringing a total of financing that we can get from operational efficiencies of 166 billion. And that's why I mentioned earlier that we must deepen the reforms. We must reform our water service providers. We must allow them to operate efficiency without interference from any quarter, so that they are able to make investment, return on investment. Now this is Nawasip, because in Nawasip you heard that we found we needed 995 billion. So when we analyze also Nawasip with the sources of financing, then for concessional financing, we need about 40% of our requirements. We can get 40% of our requirements. We need 40%. Then public-private partnership, we need 28%, and that is amount in Kenya shillings is 204. Commercial financing 59, that translates to 8% of our financial requirement. National and county revenues is 82 billion, that is 11% of our resource requirement. Then donor grants, it's 85 billion, and that is 11% also of our requirement. Then household contribution of 15 billion, that is 2% of our requirement. So this is what the plan that we have. This is the plan that we have, that we are trying now to implement. That commercial concessional financing we get up to 297 billion within the period up to 2030. Private partnership, we get 204. Commercial financing can only come if you have deepened the reforms and the water service providers are able to take from commercial banks, implement projects and repay. This has taken place in Kisumu, they have done that. This has taken place in Embu, they have done that. They borrowed 400 million, they did a sewerage system, and they are repaying, they are almost completing. We are also working now with JICA to assist some utilities prepare bankable proposals to attract commercial financing. We are working with Muranga, we are working with Embu, and Ruirujuja, so that they can get resources and also get money from commercial banks and implement projects and repay. We can also get government, national and county revenues. Basically, if we do reforms I've talked about, reforms, and then also donor grants. Donor grants, this includes also where we are targeting climate financing. So currently we are doing a proposal for climate financing so that we are able to meet this target. And then of course household contribution. So we need sustainable policy interventions, which we are doing. We need improved service delivery. Improved service delivery at utility levels, at utilities level. We need increased private sector investments. So we need private sector investment to bring in the gap of 204 billion Kenya shillings. And also we need to expand sector financing. And this also, as I still continue to say, this depends on the reforms that we take as a sector. Because we need cost recovery tariffs. We need performance-based contracts, particularly on non-revenue water. Nairobi Water can give that to an investor. We have also listed that under PPP, Nairobi Mombasa, that an investor can come, invest in reduction of non-revenue water, and is paid from the money recovered. Is paid from the money recovered, which could otherwise go get lost. The investor is paid from the money recovered from the water, the non-revenue water component. And that has happened all over the world. That has happened all over the world. So we want investors, private investors, to come and invest in Nairobi to reduce non-revenue water. Buy smart meters, install them, select your part, your zone. Then the money you have recovered, which was going to get lost, you share it with the company. The company take a portion, you take a portion. You are in business. Now when it comes to water resources, because water resources is basically where we get water to develop services. Over the years, this is an area that has not been received much intervention. It has not received much investment. So we have come up with programs aimed at water resources management. And these are surface water management, improved catchment protection, catchment restoration. Our catchments are completely, most of them are destroyed. So we need to restore them. We need to restore them so that we get water from them. They give us water which can go to serve the people. We need to do interbasin water transfer. We are doing that already. Northern Collector Tunnel is purely interbasin water transfer, because we take water from Tana drainage basin to Athi drainage basin. Lake basin management, we manage our lakes. Then groundwater management, groundwater mapping, and managed aquifer recharge. So all these are things that we need to do to improve on our water resources. So sea to lake and also enhance our water research, enhance and our innovation for the sustainability of the sector. This chart indicates the available water resources. Available water resources, the demand and projections. For each catchment, for each drainage basin, we have about 6 drainage basins. We have Lake Victoria South, we have Lake Victoria North, we have Athi, we have Tana, we have Rift Valley, and we have Wasonyiro North. 6 drainage basins. But if you can see the projection of the demand per sector and future projection 2040, you can see the situation. 2018 for Lake Victoria North, that is Kakamega region, the demand for water resources was 40 million cubic meters annually. And this is projected to go to 1.1 billion, 1.1 billion cubic meters annually by 2040. So you can see why we need to invest on water resources. And the same to domestic and industrial requirement. Needs going up. The demand is going up. The demand is heavily going up. So we need to invest on the restoration, on the conservation of catchment areas, because otherwise there will be no water to invest. There will be no water that even if you have money, you don't have water resources to develop. Even if you have funded, you have resources, you have what the billions we are missing, but we have not conserved our catchment areas, then we have got no water to develop. So these are the strategies now to have our water resources. Now I just want to take you through another slide here. This is a slide from the master plan. The master plan study that was supported by JICA in 2013, and we call it 2030 master plan. For all the drainage basins, you can see Lake Victoria North, we start there, the Lake Victoria North with this row, and then Lake Victoria South, Rift Valley, Athi, Tana, and then Wasonyiro North. Under Tana, you can see the water available by 2010. The water resources available by 2010, and you can see the water demand. If you divide the water demand and water resources, you get a ratio of 5%, which is very good, extremely good, because you have a very low ratio. The demand is very little compared with the available water resources. Yeah, that is 2010. If you go to Lake Victoria South, you get 80%. If you go to Rift Valley, you get 14%. If you go to Athi, you get 76%, extremely high. By 2010, Athi was already at 76%. Any ratio which is above 40%, 40% and above, meaning is water stress. So you can see why Athi, that is Nairobi and the whole of Ukambani, the whole of coast region, is now getting water from Tana, that is from Muranga, because Muranga is in Tana catchment. So interbasin water transfer is happening here. By 2030, you check that ratio, you will get Lake Victoria North will have reached 26%, still below 40 rather. And then Lake Victoria South will be 50%, Rift Valley will be 47%, Athi will be 281%, Tana will be 105%, Wasonyiro North will be 95%. You can see all these areas except Lake Victoria North are above 40%. A serious water problem by 2030. In fact, it is projected that per capita, available water per capita will be only 235 from the current level of 450. And the overall ratio for the country will be 81%. So it's a very bad scenario. And that's why Kenyans, we must do dams, because we must store water resources. We must do large dams. It's the way out. Based on this fact, this data, is the dams, doing dams is the way out. 2050, you can also see that the ratio will be, Lake Victoria North will be 28%, still below 40%. Lake Victoria South will be 45%. Rift Valley will be 53%. Now, this figure of 2050 is going down because there were dams listed to be done. There were dams listed to be done. Now, these dams, we can only do them if we mobilize the resources from the private sector. If you have not mobilized the resources from the private sector, we will not be able to do them because we don't have public resources enough to do all those dams. Because the rest of that time will still be 81%. So if you will be living by 2050 and the country has done nothing, then you will be consuming water from Indian Ocean in Nairobi. You will definitely be consuming water from Indian Ocean, which will be desalinated and then transported to Nairobi. Yeah. So that is what will happen that time. So we have to go into action, call to action. We were told in the morning that we need to make a call into action. And right now, there's political goodwill than ever before. Because there's a total realization that these dams needs to be done. These dams have delayed for years, and they need to be done. So we need to mobilize the resources. So private investors who are still in the room, there's opportunity here for investment. Now, the next slide here is indicating what we need to mobilize for water resources. For groundwater, we have got that figure. You can see groundwater mapping 50 million USD. Managed aquifer, you can see there. So all that has been mapped, and we require financing of 2.5 billion USD. Yeah, that's what we need. So the sector requires resources for investment. Now, when it comes to 100 dams, I've said that private-public partnership is the way to go when it comes to doing these dams. Earlier in the session, I've told you, I've indicated what we have gotten through private initiated proposals, about 10 of them. But we did market sounding. I think in February 2023, we did market sounding. We advertised 34 dams. All those dams had an investor expressing interest. Some had even up to 11 investors. Some had even up to 8 investors. So the appetite is there. The appetite is there so that we move them through the processes of PPP, and they are implemented to serve the people of Kenya. So there's huge potential for the private partners to rapidly mobilize huge resources and provide expertise, inject commercial approach, inject efficiencies in the sector. The next one is the sources of funding for this. Yeah, you can see that for the dams we have a financing gap of 750 million USD. But that would come from the private investor, and the Kenyan government and concessional loan, we are able to finance commercial viability gaps, preparation of feasibility studies, transaction advisory services, and we are also able to mitigate risks that can be absorbed by the government and provide non-sovereign guarantees, provide letter of support to the private sector. The last slide is a summary of what we need. You can see the financing gap that we have for water as built all along, for sanitation, for water resources, and for dams. You can also bring in the gap that we have for irrigation, which is also 435 billion Kenya shillings. So this goes up to close to 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings, 1.8 if you include irrigation. So that is the last slide. We want to thank you so much for being in this session. What we are saying is that the sector needs investment, The sector needs investment from the private players, private sector players. Please invest in the water sector. Thank you so much.
Asante, maybe we can appreciate engineer. Yes, you would agree with me then that we are in safe hands, experienced hands, and on the right track. But so that we are all on the same page, we would like to invite any clarifications or questions, maybe one or two from a gentleman or lady in the audience. Please, anyone? Okay. Please.
And pass it. If there's a mic, we can pass it for people who are far.
Engineer Lima, thank you very much for very interesting presentations. My name is Guillaume Patricot. I'm a director of Gulf Consultants Africa. I've been working in Kenya for quite a long time, and I must say that the 34 dam PPPs are a very interesting opportunity for all strong and credible consultants, contractors and investors, and equally operators. We have studied each and every of those 34 projects, so we know where they are, we know the level of detail that exists on the dossiers of a feasibility study. But I think that we need help to focus on perhaps 5 projects. Launching 34 projects is impossible. We need guidance in the sector, and we need to be able to spend time on where we think the success or the likelihood of success is greatest. Although we are talking about attracting private investment in the water sector, we have not really delved into what I think is one of the key issues, which is the ability to operate. And the ability to operate a water company, to operate a bulk water treatment plant well enough so that we can make money out of it. So I think that we should be thinking about smaller levels of private sector participation so that we develop in Kenya a track record of successfully launching, implementing and delivering PPPs, which, having been here for 14 years, we don't have a strong track record in PPPs. And maybe the international development partners think otherwise, but I'm talking about the practitioners, the people that will be doing the work, the people that will be designing, building, operating and financing those projects. So I would like to ask you a question: which of the 34 dam PPPs should the industry be focusing on, and why? Asante.
Yes, engineers, you respond. Speak to the potential that is there for PPPs especially in water, and not forgetting also sewerage and sanitation. We've had a framework for PPPs in place for quite a while, but it's true that it takes a bit of more effort to get a pilot PPP running. Yes, Engineer.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. I'm happy to note that you have studied all of them. And that is good, and that means that the appetite is there, because for you to take your time to study them, that means you are concerned, you want to invest. So we should assist you to invest. We should assist you to invest. And if you can work with us, we can give you a team to be giving you information on the information that you want. Yeah. It's also good that we start, some countries like Rwanda are just started from very small production units through PPPs. And then they divide the cost. The government bring a certain part, the private investor bring another part. Maybe the private investor install these composite units, and then the government delivers the water to the people. They have started small, and if you note what I said, we also encourage even those who can start small, even boreholes, do them under regulations. Now, these 34 projects, I said we advertised last year, February. In fact, it was 12th February, 2023. Then the National Treasury was in the process of engaging a transaction advisor for us. That exercise has just been concluded. So that the transaction advisor will now analyze these 34 and advise us on the ones that we need to process further. That these are the ones that we need to process further. As I indicated earlier, that we had feasibility studies done. But these feasibility studies were done by engineers like me. So they were purely engineering feasibility studies. They never factored the cost of the capital. Because here, the capital will come from the investor's own sources, which is equity, and the capital will also come from what the investor will borrow from banks or from a financier, which will come with cost. There will be an interest rate for that. So that's where we are, and that's why we have not progressed much with the 34, because the transaction advisor is now on board to analyze them and recommend the most viable projects. We are progressing with the PIPs because these are purely initiated by private investors. Yeah. So I think you know now where we are. Once the transaction advisor starts work and analyzed all of them, then we'll be able to advise the private companies that applied for them, that expressed interest for them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other question? We do have a PPP desk at the ministry. Please come over. Let's continue the conversation.
Yeah. So we can continue with the conversation even after this conference. The investors who are interested, information that are needed, we can continue with the conversation. We can be provided with information.
Yeah, thank you very much, Engineer Lima, for the presentation. I know the presentation is very wide, it's not specific, and maybe if we have details will be able to scrutinize. Now, my question is on the 100 dams. Which have you already identified the dams? You had mentioned in another speech that we have 56 already. So the 56 are in which areas and which ones are these? Are they meant for irrigation or conserving the water for domestic use? Or what, yeah, if you have identified, what will be their, are they going to be for irrigation? Which ones are going to be for irrigation and which ones are going to be for water supply? Then on funding, I would think we need to have different sources of funding. If we rely only on PPPs, I think it might not go far. We may have a mix of funding, attract both PPPs, see whether we can get concessional funding, grants, GOK, and which ones are those? Yeah, something like that. Thank you.
I think I can take it up.
Yeah, my name is Honorable Lucas Chepkitony. I'm a director at Water Sectors Trust Fund.
Thank you so much. You are one of us. You are right that we need to have a mix of funding. Yeah, because you saw when it was raining, this last long rains, what was happening in Wajir, flooding coming from Ethiopia, flooding Mandera, flooding Wajir, flooding Moyale, all that region, because it's a water course from Ethiopia. The water is coming from Ethiopian highlands. So we have, as a ministry, we have noted we cannot have all these dams because we have got several dams lined up. We have got Bute Dam in Wajir. We have got Malkamari Dam in Mandera. We have got several dams there which are lined up. But we cannot wait for PPP all of them. So we have categorized what we call social dams. Social dams, the government can come in, put the government resources and do those dams. The government can get money from development partners to do those dams. And I also mentioned that we are doing climate financing, proposal for climate financing, particularly to do those dams, and we have classified them as social dams. We have classified them as social dams. So it is true, Mheshimiwa, that we have a mix of funding, not just one source. Now, when it comes to the list of dams have been identified. We have got 100 large dams, the list is identified. We have got 1,000 medium dams, the list identified. We have got 4,000 small dams and water ponds, the list have been identified. So we have a booklet. We have a booklet of dams, water ponds, large dams, water ponds, medium dams, social projects. We have got that booklet. So we have identified all of them. And all of them have got uses. There are some that are just for domestic only. But for them to be bankable, there needs to be several revenue streams. Several revenue streams. We have got domestic, we have irrigation, and we have got power. So most of the dams, I think about 16, have power component. About 16 of them are power component. Majority of them have irrigation component. Yeah. If you think of Lowat in Turkana is for irrigation. If you think of Radat in Baringo, it's irrigation component is major. Because there's land there. If you think of the Isiolo Dam or Crocodile Joe in Isiolo, it has a component of irrigation. It has a component of power. Yeah. But some are purely domestic. For example, Uma Dam in Kitui, that is purely domestic. It's just next to town. There's no land for irrigation. There's no, the site cannot generate power. So it is just a domestic. But Dasa Dam in Masabet is just for domestic. Bosto Dam in Bomet is just domestic. Amaya in the border between Baringo, Samburu, Laikipia, I think it's for both. Yeah. Berigay Dam in Baringo, for both and including power. So they have got various components. They are multipurpose in nature. And where possible, we want them to be multipurpose in nature, so that you have got several revenue streams. If domestic is bringing some streams, then irrigation is bringing, particularly if you have got commercial commercial irrigation. If you have commercial irrigation, and then power is also having its own stream of revenue, then the projects become very easily viable. I think I've answered your question.
Yes, we are hoping by 2030 the list will not be of 100, maybe less, and we can revise the syllabus. When I was younger, we were always told of the 7 fork dams. We are still in 5, so we still remain with 2. I say, gentlemen, maybe you have a question?
Yeah, thank you for engineer for this interesting presentation and regarding of the dams. First of all, we are glad to be here. I'm Mohammed Al Yusuf from Saudi Arabia, Saudi Water Partnership Company, and for the dams under PPP model, it will be first model will be it's under study in our country, and we are very interested and keen to know the project here in Kenya. My question here is for the dams, how will be charge the tariff? It will be as a capacity charge, or will be, I mean, the driver of the tariff is it will be the capacity charge of the lake? And are you planning to be include the renewable energy? I mean, if there is to be use the floating PV or something to will be generate power from the dams and the structure of the dams. The last question, or it's a request, if you are, we are keen to be participate and to be with you gentlemen to be for this study, and also to know exactly for the project as a pilot project in Saudi Arabia. We have many of the dams. We are interested to be rehab of the exist and also the new dams. So good to will be with you joint as a team to understand how will be the fly of the PPP of these dams. This is my question, and thank you.
Thank you so much, our colleague from Saudi Arabia. As you have heard, Kenya is 80% ASAL, and that's where we have very little rainfall. The dams we have, or we have proposed, cut across. There are some which are in ASAL areas, there are some which are in high potential areas. So it is the investor to analyze and say, this is the most viable dam. We don't restrict. If we were to restrict private investors, then we could have said, let's do all the ones in ASAL. But because private investor will come, analyze the dams and say, this is the most viable, this is the one I want to invest in. For example, along that river, where we have Karibeno Dam, we had Darugu Dam 1 next to Thika. I think it is called Gatei River. So when the investor came, he analyzed the first site that we saw him, analyze in detail, analyze the amount of water to be produced, how we'll be able to pump this water to Nairobi, and what is the cost of CAPEX, what is the cost of OPEX, or that is O&M cost. And that dam is really, really needed, because it's the dam that will assist us for the eastern Nairobi. Embakasi area, Ruai area, those areas do not have water. And it was supposed to bring 200,000 meter cubed of water per day. That is what we designed for. And we were saying if this investor can invest on this, then that will be great, because we will be able to resolve the challenges of East Nairobi. This goes up to serving Kitengela, serving Mavoko area. Those who have relatives in Kitengela, there's a challenge of water. I think maybe they are telling you how they are the difficulties they are going through looking for water. So when the investor did that assessment, he said, no, I cannot invest here. I'm going upstream. I'm going up very much upstream. So he came up with a site. Instead of producing 200,000 meter cubed per day, he would produce 50,000 meter cubed per day. Yeah. And instead of that site was very expensive, the new site is far much cheaper. But we said, because we are interested in this site, you are the one who want to invest, and we take this water, go ahead and invest. Because even if it is 50,000 meter cubed of water per day, that would still come to Nairobi and reduce the deficit. So we don't restrict the investor on where to go. We don't say, this is urban, this is rural, this is ASAL, do this. It is the investor's choice. After doing a thorough feasibility study, thorough analysis, and seeing that this is what I want. It's like you want to go and buy a cow from the market. There are so many cows in the market. But you look at them based on your experience as you are a farmer, and say, this is the one I need. The people in the market will not tell you, no, buy this one. You buy what you need. You go for what you need. You go for what is good for you. So us, we just facilitate you. We just assist you with the information you need. Yeah? If there are a letter of support that you want, we just assist you. We just assist the investor, fully assist the investor. If there are viability gaps that you need, we fully assist you. The governments take over that component. Yeah, and implement. Together, when you are doing your part, the government is also implementing that part, so that once you are done, you have water to sell. So we need further discussion the way you have suggested. We are there for you. We are there to give you information. We are there to guide you up to the conclusion of the project that you will choose. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Maybe final one. Any other final? Okay. Just by way of information, we would have been pleased to have the irrigation secretary with us, but all the same, I will present what he had in mind to share. The irrigation sector that is preparing the National Irrigation Sector Investment and Financing Plan, a mirror to what we have in the water sector's NAWASIP. So the NASIP is being, NISIP is being prepared and will guide the sector going forward. And on the milestones for the bottom-up transformation, areas under irrigation have marginally increased since June 2022 to December 2023 by 7.2%. This is due to completed community managed projects. Volume of water harvested and stored for irrigation has increased by 20%. This is as a result of completion of the Thiba Dam, community and household water plant projects. The third one is on paddy rice production. This has increased by 21%. From where irrigation scheme, where the increment was from new rice schemes developed and double cropping. Fourth is areas reclaimed have increased by 1%. This is in Turkana and Baringo counties. For flood control, dikes, in June it was 61 kilometers. We are now at 68 kilometers of dikes in Turkana, Kisumu, Baringo, Migori, Homa Bay, Trans Nzoia, and Isiolo. Galana Kulalo, we have Twiga Food Limited has approved to undertake production on 20 acres trial basis. They have already done 538 acres. There is the implementation of Galana Kulalo multi-purpose dam of capacity 400 million cubic meters. We have a private initiated proposal that has been approved, and now we are on the project development phase. We have the implementation of the High Grand Falls, 5,600 million cubic meters. Again, for this one also, we have a privately initiated proposal that has been approved by the PPP Directorate. Thank you. Asanteni sana for your audience. We are really pleased that you are able to join us. And like has been said, please engage with us. We will be around tomorrow, the day after. If you have any queries, we are very much available. Thank you. Let's appreciate ourselves.
Our Water Secretary, Engineer Lima, and Engineer Mwakeo for that good session and for good interactions from the audience. I'm sure we are moving in the right direction in the conversation about PPPs and the overall theme of accelerating access to sustainable, accelerating investments to sustainable access to water and sanitation for all. We've come to an end, so kindly now you are free. I know some of us, we stayed here the whole time. We probably didn't even realize when tea was. So if you find yourself a cup of tea, you're welcome. If not, we promise you will have a lot of it tomorrow. So thank you, and once again, let's meet here tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. for our first plenary on PPPs. There is only one, actually, there's one side event today starting at 5:30 to 7. It's going to be at Lenana Hall. It's a side event and you're welcome to attend. It's going to be looking at the challenges of public-private partnerships. And thank you, Engineer Mwakeo. I think that is one session that was almost getting forgotten. So we do have another conversation going on. It's a convener session, but it's a side event because it's coming kind of outside the normal time for the other events. So thank you so much and see you tomorrow.